Welcome back. And for today, I'm going to be branching out just a little bit. I'm going to be trying this brand called Goral, which I was vaguely familiar with, although I didn't know much about them. I was aware that they produced a lot of very nice sneakers. And let me just clarify one thing. I don't mind sneakers. In fact, I do like regular sneakers. I'm just not a fan of the hybrid dress sneakers. Taking a formal design like a Park Avenue cap toe and then putting a sneaker sole on that, it just doesn't work for me. But sneakers that are actual sneakers, I don't mind at all, and actually I do own a few pair of them. But I'm getting off track. But for this video, I'm going to be looking at the Sharman Boot, which is made by Goral, and they are a brand that makes all of their shoes and boots in England, but they focus mainly on casual type of boots and shoes. Actually, I don't know if it's pronounced Goral or Goral, but I'm going to assume it's Goral. Someone reached out to me who was very nice from Goral, and they were interested in sponsoring a video for this channel. And of course, what color am I going to pick but green, right? They have this really nice shade of forest green Chrome Excel, which comes from the Horween Tannery in Chicago. And immediately when I saw that, I knew that that's what I wanted to review. I mean, this is like the perfect shade of olive-ish green for a boot, at least in my eyes. And I actually think it's the same leather that Crown used for their shoes that I just reviewed. I'm pretty certain it's exactly the same leather. And I'm glad to see that Goral and Crown are using this leather. I would like to see more companies, especially in the US, also use it. So yes, this is a sponsored video, but I only accept sponsors of footwear that I think I'm going to like, because I'm just not in the interest of saying a lot of bad things about a product on this channel. Now, having said that though, this boot is a bit of a departure from what I'm used to. I'm used to mainly Goodyear welts and a few moccasin constructions, but I don't have anything in Blake Stitch, so this is the first Blake Stitch product that I've reviewed on this channel. And that's a shame, because there are some great brands out there, such as like Rancourt, that use Blake Stitch construction. So having said that, yes, this is a sponsored video, but as usual, I'm going to try to give you my honest thoughts about why you might want to own these or why you might want to pass. So let's get started. I'll begin this video by stating that I think the upper of this boot looks amazing. Now, at least in terms of the color, this is about as ideal of a green color that I look for in a pair of boots, because it's like an olive green, but it's not too dark and it's definitely not too bright. Now, this color of green leather, while it's perfect for me, I have to admit that there was another leather that they offered that was equally as tempting, and that is known as the green Kagashi leather that they had. The reason why I passed on this though was because I just slightly preferred the forest green color. I was also under the impression that the Chrome Excel would be easier for me to break in and would be something I would more likely use in my day-to-day life. I was a little bit afraid that this other Kagashi leather would be too stiff or difficult to break in. But if you want to see a video on that, Dale's Leatherworks did a review on it, so go check that out. This really nice Chrome Excel leather comes from the Horween factory in Chicago, Illinois, which every leather that I've ever had from that factory has been fantastic. Probably the leather I own the most though would be the natural Chrome Excel, which I just love. Because it is Chrome Excel, of course it's going to get easily scratched, dinged, dented. It just gets blemished very easily. So these wouldn't be my first choice of boot if I was going to go hiking or go off-roading, because they're really not designed for that. Unless, of course, you don't mind adding a lot of character to your boots. That's for you to decide. The boot design is very straightforward. It's very much the same as my Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill or my Alden boots that are plain toe boots. So it's just your standard plain toe derby type of boot. However, there are a couple of details I want to mention. I do appreciate that there is a triple stitch on the derby part of the boot. The uppers also have very nice piping, which you can see all around the throat of the boot, as well as by where the lacing gap is. And speaking of the lacing gap, this boot contains 8 eyelets. There are no speed hooks, it just contains eyelets. The eyelets have what looks like an unpolished kind of brass eyelet. It doesn't stand out, it doesn't have a shininess to it, so it just blends in nicely with the boot. Now, here's where I have to give Goral some of my best praise. They perfectly knew how to choose the right color of laces for these boots. They have these load-in color laces that are almost like a gray. It's really more like a green-gray color. But anyway, this color of laces on the boots, I just wish more companies would do this because this looks perfect. This is how you match laces to boots. Other companies, take note, Goral got it right. This is how you match boot laces with boots. And another thing about the laces is that they are plenty long. They are not too short. I can use these. I do not have to buy replacement laces, which is rare when I get boots. I almost always have to replace the laces, but not this time. These fit perfectly, and I believe they are about 55 inches long. Now, let's talk a minute about the last. Because this boot is sort of intended to be like a hybrid of a nice casual boot and a little bit of sneaker thrown in, it's not surprising that it has a more rounder look in the toe area. Now, it is more round and it does sort of have the overall shape of a sneaker, more towards the back of the shoe where the waist is, all the way back to the heel. However, it is not extremely wide at the ball of the foot. This helps the boot retain some level of sleekness to it, so it's not overly wide. Another important thing to mention is that this is not a long last. And I wouldn't say it's extremely short either, but it's definitely not long. It's on the shorter end of the spectrum in terms of the lasts that I own. And that's another indicator that this boot is sort of a hybrid of a boot and a sneaker. Now, in addition to the upper being this gorgeous color of green and having the nice piping, it also is fully lined. The lining is this cream-colored lining, very soft, very nice. It actually appears to me to be one of the linings that Crockett & Jones also uses in some of their shoes. And up towards the throat of the boot, there is some additional Chrome Excel lining, what I think is just there for aesthetics. The boot also has this leather hanging pull tab, although I'd probably recommend a shoehorn most of the time, unless of course you don't have one. And also, some of you might appreciate that this boot has a gusseted tongue up until about the third eyelet, it looks like. And of course the tongue is lined just like the rest of the boot. One other very important difference to mention about this boot is that it contains a removable leather insole. Now, it's been a long time since I've owned a pair of shoes or boots that have a removable insole. In fact, the last one that I owned was a shoe that I purchased way back in 2015, and that was an Allen Edmonds shoe that had one of those removable leather insoles, which is the same as this. Now, some people might be turned off by this because you will eventually have to replace the leather insole because they do wear out. But as far as I know, you can purchase replacement insoles for these. How long into the future? I don't know, but it's just something to consider. And another reason why this is important to know is because you can wear the boots without the leather insole, but it's going to change the size considerably. It's going to make it a lot more generous fitting. And it's also going to lose a lot of that softness that you get from this nicely cushioned leather insole. And just for me personally, I don't find the boots very comfortable wearing them directly onto the leather insole. And I think the reason is because I can feel little prickliness where the Blake stitching is that wraps around the insole. This is one difference between Goodyear welted, is that with Blake stitched, it's stitched directly into the insole. And at least for me, I don't really like this feeling on my feet, so it would be a requirement for me to be able to have the leather cushion insole. But just speaking about the leather insole, it is very comfortable. It's as comfortable as any of my other boots, including my Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill boots, which have a pour-on insole that's not removable, but it's basically the same kind of feeling, at least for me. In other words, very comfortable. One other thing I want to mention about the insole, though, is that it has a surprisingly good amount of arch support. You can just look at it and see there's a lot of arch support shape at the waist area and heel of the insole. So that's something that kind of surprised me because I was expecting it to be a lot more flat. This is good because it will actually help support it more for the long run. So as it breaks down over time, it should last a little bit longer, and it should provide very good arch support for a long time. And at least for me, I greatly appreciate this because I've already talked about how I love the Alden modified last. Well, one of the reasons is because that last has such a nice shape to the arch area. It just fits my foot so perfectly. And for me, I like to have a little bit of extra arch support shape that really helps my feet. Now, it's not for everyone. Some people are going to have feet that are just not going to work well with this, so you have to determine if you're a good candidate for it. If you have extremely flat feet, this might not be the best boot for you. Now, one deceptive thing about this boot is that it looks like it's really tall, but in actuality, it's really not. It's just that the Blake stitching on the outsole portion, it rides up higher on the upper. This is something that Goral does that is kind of unique to their brand as far as I know, and it may not appeal to everyone, but it gives this illusion that the outsole is much taller and thicker than it actually is. But having said that, it's still a pretty thick outsole, and the outsole is actually comparable to like a day-night sole on some of my other boots, or even some of the lug soles that are not too tall. It's almost as thick as the commando type sole that I have on my Parker's boots. So there is a good amount of height in the outsole. And I want to also mention that the rubber outsole is not extremely soft, which is something I like. I like to have my outsoles be a little bit more firm. It's just more comfortable for me, and it gives me much better support. I do not like outsoles on my boots to be extremely soft, and it can actually be problematic for me. And speaking of support, I'm not going to slice open these boots to show you this. There is a steel shank in these boots, and I think that's wonderful because that's what I prefer the most. Steel shanks are the best in my opinion. And of course, because these are high quality boots, you can get them resoled at least a few times. Another nice detail worth mentioning is that it contains a real leather heel counter, and it has the reverse suede type of heel, which is common in a lot of British brands I've noticed. They will use this reverse suede sort of heel because that helps grip your heel better and helps prevent heel slip. Now, I don't find them to be extremely wide at the heel. I think they fit true to size. Now, do you need a special type of shoe tree for this boot? No. In fact, you should probably be able to get away with pretty much any standard shoe tree. One other thing I'll mention is that these boots do contain a lot of high quality materials in them. There is a lot of actual leather in the footbed and in the midsole and insole area. There are some synthetic materials, sure. There is some foam in there, but I'm just speaking that this company does not really compromise on the quality that they put into each pair. Now, let's talk about sizing. I am a size 8D in US sizing in pretty much all my boots. In this one, I am a 7 in the UK sizing, and I find that it fits me just right. I am almost always a size 7 in shoes from England. So for these boots, I do find that they fit true to size, but I will mention that they are a little bit more snug than I thought they would be. Not tight, but snug. When I got these, I was a little surprised because I thought they might fit kind of like generously or loose, but they do grip your feet pretty well in the beginning. Not in a painful way, but just know that you might have a little bit of break-in when you start wearing them, as I did. Now, the break-in really was not bad with these. In fact, the only spot in the boots where I really felt some discomfort was in the area right where it breaks or creases. In that area just above where the big toe is, you can see there's a crease there. For some reason, the leather was kind of hitting the top of my foot. When the boots would flex, for some reason it put a little bit of pressure on that upper toe area. So that was the only thing that I did not enjoy, but the rest of it was very easy to break in. It is Chrome Excel, so sometimes Chrome Excel will take some time to break in, although not very long. And to be honest, Chrome Excel is one of the easiest leathers for boots to break in, far easier than some of the other leathers that are out there. So you shouldn't be worried at all about the discomfort level with these as far as the break-in, as it's going to be one of the easiest types of leather to break in. One other thing I appreciate about this boot is that it doesn't have a really generous waist area. In a lot of shoes from the UK, I've had difficulty because there's a lot of space at the waist area. Sometimes there's just way too much extra room there, but with this boot, they got it right, at least for people like me. Now, just speaking about the last, what does it remind me of? Well, nothing totally, to be honest, because it does vaguely remind me of the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill last, although not really. It's got its own different thing going on. It's not quite as wide at the ball of the foot as the Higgins Mill, and it's also a little bit shorter. However, the overall impression and look of the boot is kind of similar, and the outsole definitely has a similar shape to the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill. One other thing I want to mention is that the weight of these boots is surprisingly light considering all the materials that go into them and how they are in appearance. I thought these would weigh more than they actually do, just based off the appearance, but they're surprisingly lightweight, which I think will appeal to a lot of people. Also, the outsole does offer very good traction because this outsole has a lot of areas where it grips. At least in rainy conditions, I found this outsole to be at least as good as day-night, if not better. Although I have not been able to wear it in rain as much as I wanted to for this video. Now, how would I wear these boots? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I probably don't have to go into a lot of detail on this. This is not a boot you're going to wear with a suit. Of course not. It's something that I would wear with jeans. I would also wear it with some chinos, but for me personally, I think it's just at home with jeans, and that's how I would wear it pretty much all the time. It's just a perfect boot if you want to go out in the cooler fall and winter months and you're wearing some jeans. Now, my only regret about making this video in September is that we haven't had a lot of rain this month and we've not had very much cool weather, so I didn't really get to wear this boot in the fall conditions that I was hoping to. Now, what things would I change about this boot? The first is that while the 8 eyelets do look very nice, I wish it did have speed hooks, even if it were just 2, but I prefer 3 speed hooks. That's just my preference. It's easier for me to put on the boots and take them off with speed hooks. One other thing I would probably change is that I would rather have just a foam insole, like a pour-on insole that other boots offer. I think for me, I just would prefer that over a removable insole. Not that there will be any difference in practicalness in how the boots work. It won't really change anything. I'm just thinking of longevity in that if someday that insole is not available anymore, then I have to find one from another company. So that's one reason why I think I would prefer it to be just a regular pour-on insole. The other thing that I'm not criticizing, but I think it could turn off some people, is that the side of the outsole where the Blake stitch rides up on the upper, that could turn off some people because it does make the appearance of the outsole look very large. But this part of the boot also gives it a bit of a sneaker appearance, which may turn some people off or some people may like it. Now, me personally, I'm kind of indifferent to it. If anything, I appreciate that it's something different. It gives me some variety because none of my other boots or shoes have this type of outsole. And I've already mentioned that I do not have any Blake Stitch shoes or boots, so this is my first pair. Now, is there anything else I could say about this boot that I would change? Well, there is one other thing that I would change, and that is the instep. The instep space on these boots is not ideal for me. It's really more like an average or slightly below average instep room, meaning that I wish there were a little bit more instep room, because when I lace these boots up, you'll notice that it is a pretty wide gap. However, it doesn't cause me any problems because As I said before, the laces are plenty long, so I don't have an issue with the laces. But this is just something to consider. But this boot is not like some of my other boots that are made from Alden that have the really generous instep. And that brings me to the price of these boots. They are not cheap. They retail for $485 USD as of September 2025. That's definitely not cheap for most people. However, I will try to put this in perspective. This boot still costs less than the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill boot at full retail. Now, of course, Allen Edmonds will have sales often, so you can get them about $350 instead of $550, which is the retail. These Goral boots retail for $485, and you can get a 10% discount if you sign up on their website. So it's comparable to the price of the Higgins Mill by Allen Edmonds. It's still way cheaper than anything from Alden or Viberg or any of those other brands that are very high quality. But at the same time, this is not like a $200 boot. You definitely want to be sure this is the right thing for you before you invest in the price. Now, do I think they're worth it at $485? Yes, I do. The reason is because not only do these contain a lot of really high quality components, there's just so much leather in the boots. There's a steel shank. The construction is just excellent. The finishing is really high quality. I had no issues with finishing. It's just a really well-made boot. In fact, I would argue, objectively, it's better made than the Allen Edmonds Higgins Mill. However, I'm not saying that it's better than the Higgins Mill. I'm just saying that the quality of the materials that went into it is better. But when you're buying a boot, you have to decide what experience do you want. That's the most important thing. Obviously, there's no wrong answer here. I'm just trying to give you a view of some options. But overall, I just have to say that Goral did a really good job with this boot, especially with picking the uppers, the colors, the laces, the piping. Everything about the boot is very well designed, and it's obvious that it's a very high quality build. I have another video that I'm going to put out later this fall, and it's going to be about what is my most heavily used pair of olive or green color boots. So watch out for that. I want to say thank you to Goral, and especially Katie at Goral, for reaching out to me and for them being so generous to send me this very nice pair of boots. I had no experience with their brand before, but I'm very glad that I had a chance to finally try them. And I really look forward to seeing what they come up with in the future. I just think they really have a good understanding of what people like myself look for when they're trying to buy boots or shoes in terms of the color of the uppers. And if you're interested in purchasing a pair of Goral boots, I do have an affiliate link below this video. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's just a way for you to help support my channel, and it's totally optional. But thank you if you do decide to use my affiliate link. So, I hope you got something useful out of this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon on the next review. Bye for now.